I'm Anthony Monteith. This is episode 17 of Cup of Chi. And here we're today with the legend, Freya Sherlock, who has dedicated pretty much since the 1980s her life to Chinese medicine of some sort. Mm-hmm. And the story is way too big to fit on this podcast. So we're going to try to condense her story. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we've been up to in West Cork and what Freya is bringing to Ireland, which is pretty exciting. So Freya, thanks for having me and for bullying me and cajoling me to come and teach.
It's been a pleasure all the way.
Yeah, we've had some fun.
We've had some fun. It's good crack. Some West Cork crack.
West Cork crack. So yeah, as you can tell, we're definitely not Irish.
No.
But we're kind of adopted Irish at this stage. Mm-hmm. And you've 4 kids who are Irish. Mm-hmm. Or 2 kids who are Irish, so we're trying to repopulate Ireland and help sort of absolve all that Cromwellian dysfunction that we created. But so yeah, Freya, where did it begin? Where did your journey begin?
Gosh, so really it began back in 1985 when I was a 16-year-old living in India. And got pretty sick with what was suspected meningitis.
Wow.
Ended up in a hospital in the Tibetan refugee village up in Dharamsala, where the Dalai Lama and all the Tibetan refugees are living, and was seen by an Australian doctor who did all the lumbar punctures and all that kind of crack. Signed me off as just needing a lot of convalescence and care. Put me in the hospital wing, where I was tended for several weeks by the most beautiful Tibetan nun. And she would come in to me 3 times a day, and I was the only patient in the ward at the time. Very simple ward, stone floors, walls, pristine white sheets on the bed. And I had a bed next to the window, and I used to just sit there listening to the bumblebees on the rhododendrons, and just, that was as much as effort as I could make. I was so sick, listening to the bugles in the distance, watching just the summer day come and go. And she'd come in 3 times a day. Obviously, she didn't speak English, and I certainly didn't speak Tibetan. She'd sit down next to me, and she would take a little parcel of a ball of medicine that was wrapped up in cloth with a little red string. She'd undo it in this incredibly meditative way, crush the medicine, mix it with some water, and just watching her was restorative. Her presence, her just something about her, just soul essence. Just watching the way she unfolded everything, crushed it, and then she mixed it with water, and then she spooned it into me. And I could feel strength returning to me with every spoonful that she fed me. And it was partly her presence. It was partly just this amazing place where I was. And then it was the actual medicine. I could just feel this power, like feeling a tide come back in. It was like I could feel vitality return to me. So when I came out, it was a good couple of weeks later, I was like, where is this medicine happening? And I went and found at the very far end of the village, the little apothecary. And I would just go and sit in there. And I was mesmerized just watching the hive of activity of this place. Couldn't understand a word. People coming in, bringing in their children, bringing in their dogs, bringing in whoever. Long counter with a couple of doctors behind it. Animated conversation going on, tongue, pulse. And then he'd turn around, grab a load of herbs off the shelves, crush it all, mix it all. And out they go with medicine. And I was like just mesmerized. So anyway, I was there for a year and a bit, year and a half.
Right.
And when I came back to the West, I was 17 and a half. And I was like, right, I want to learn Tibetan medicine. Where do I start? And of course, there was nowhere to learn Tibetan medicine in those days. Back in, that was then sort of 88, 89. But I found a Chinese medicine training, a 2-year diploma in Chinese medicine. So at 19, I went off and did that for 2 years, which was very fortunate because I had a brain in those days.
Right.
So I laid down some great foundation while I had young neoplasticity to rely on.
No.
And that really, I just lived for that training. I was having quite a lot of difficulties in my personal life at the time. And every month I went for a weekend of training, and it was like drinking elixir into my heart and soul.
Right.
And every weekend I just came back feeling so inspired and like, this is incredible. Didn't understand it necessarily, but it felt like it was nourishing an essence that hadn't been touched by anything before.
Right.
It was like it was reaching the parts of me that nothing else had ever touched. And that was it. I was sold. But then, of course, you know, life takes over. I actually conceived my first child 2 weeks before my final exams. So as I finished that, I then started an era of raising children, 4 kids, 15 odd years later, set up a Steiner school, ran a Steiner school for the kids. And then one day that all burnt down. Actually burnt down twice. We had a fire, and then 6 weeks later, there was a second fire. And at the end of that, I kind of sat back and I went, right, well, I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
What will I do with the rest of my life? And I was actually really burnt out in my own life.
So the school was almost burnt out because you were burnt out.
Probably. It was on our farm, and I had invested my heart and soul into it because, of course, my kids went through it. It was a community school. All the children in the area were going to it. We had 50 kids on the roll when the day, 55 kids on the roll. It was a
popular school.
It was a really popular school. Really built bridges. There was as many local kids, blowing kids, as there were local kids, and it was a cracking little school. Absolute hive of community down there. It was beautiful. But we had a busy little arsonist in the area, and he went around destroying all sorts of things, and our place was one of the casualties. So I was so kind of like just wrung out, 4 kids and all of this for so many years. I'm running a 60 acre, well, at that point, an 80 acre organic farm, and I was just wrung out. And my mother, bless her, got me an acupuncture treatment when I went over to visit her at one point with the kids. And I would laid out on this acupuncture treatment, and as he was putting needles in, I was like, that's spleen 3. Oh, that's stomach 36. Oh, right. Well, could I remember these? And then there was this moment where I thought, I'm meant to be where he is. What am I doing on the table? I should be doing what he's doing. And it was in that moment, it was like, this is what I need to be doing with my life.
Okay.
I've got to go back and retrain, because it had been so long. I didn't want to rely on my first training. I thought, no, I've got to go back and do this properly.
Sure. So
I went back and signed up for a 4-year degree level course in Cork. Went through that, and that was great foundation, but I came out hungry for more. I had a super herbs teacher, and that lit a fire in me. And I was like, right, I've started, but I know there's more that I need to know than I have learned. Right. And I don't feel like I'm yet equipped to really be responsible for people's health. Right. So I'm going to keep going. So I did start my practice, and I was practicing, but I then embarked on a 5-year master's program. Well, it was a postgrad in herbs with a master's attached. So I then went through the 2-year postgrad part, which was great. That was over in York. And then we came to the dissertation. And coming to the dissertation subject, I was like, all the kind of topics that people were doing were very evidence-based. There was a real push towards evidence-based acupuncture at the time.
What sort of era time frame would this be?
This would be like 2016, thereabouts. 2014, 2015, 2016, that kind of thing. And there was a real renaissance at the time around let's kind of rub shoulders with science. Let's really evidence acupuncture and herbs. It's got to be scientific. It's got to have rigor. It's got to have this. It's got to have that. Yeah. And I just felt increasingly uncomfortable that Chinese medicine was having to fit like a square peg in a round hole. And I didn't like that we were having to dance to the tune of science and compromise and sacrifice and actually betray the principles of Chinese medicine in the process. And it felt like an act of betrayal. So I literally spent about 3 months even trying to come up with a topic for my dissertation. It was like, shall I look at gynae? Shall I look at this? Shall I look at the other? Reading tons of papers. And it all just left me cold. My heart wasn't in it. Right. So I really had to sit down and have a good talk to myself. I was like, okay, the program has to serve me, not me serve the program. Right. I'm doing this because I want to deepen my knowledge. What is it I actually want to learn? And I thought, what I really actually want to learn is more about the classical approach to Chinese medicine. I've never had that before. I'd only ever had a TCM training. Yeah. But I knew that it was skin deep compared to the depth that I was hungry for. Yeah. So I thought, okay, is there some way of making an opportunity out of this dissertation and use it to to explore that, for me, uncharted territory.
Right. And what was your dissertation about?
So very foolishly, I took on something far too big for me.
Yeah, that sounds like you.
And I was like, okay, I know nothing about Jing Feng. I know nothing about Dr. Feng Sherlock's tradition, but I've heard good things about it.
Right.
So I'm going to take the opportunity of finding out about Jing Feng from the Feng Sherlock tradition and use that for my thesis.
Is it based on the Hun Yuan theory?
Well, it's based on 6 confirmations.
Oh, okay.
It's the Shanhan Lung. It's the but you know, the Shanhan Lung has lots of lineages within it.
Okay.
There's so many. There's probably, I think there's like 26 different lineages that all come from the Shanhan Lung.
Right.
But Dr. Feng Sherlock, whose own teacher was Dr. Hu Shishu, is one particular lineage. But I just liked everything I'd heard about it, and what I particularly liked was the clinical efficacy of it.
Right. It's a big monster of a system.
It's a monster of a system.
I've seen it in action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So off I went to China during what was probably the most traumatic summer of my life personally. I was literally on a personal level in pieces. Went off to Beijing and spent all day, every day with Dr. Suzanne Robidoux, who was the translator for Dr. Feng Sherlock at the time. And I studied and trained like crazy with her during the day, and then went home and fell apart in my personal life in the evenings.
Oh, no.
Sobbed my way around the streets of Beijing,
shit.
Parked my personal life, came back into class in the morning, carried on with Jing Feng. And basically we rotated around 5 different hospitals each week. So Mondays in one place, Tuesdays in another. We would just observe Dr. Feng Sherlock in clinic in the mornings, and then we'd go back with Dr. Robidoux in the afternoons and analyze and unpack in English what had happened in the mornings. And of course, I knew nothing about Jing Feng before I went out there. It was literally right over my head.
Yeah, deep.
Didn't understand a dicky bird, but I was fascinated. And from that, I then tried to do a correlation of, what are the TCM principles to herbalism? What are the Jing Feng principles? And if you were to take a hypothetical patient and analyze them through the lens of TCM and then analyze them through the lens of Jing Feng, where would you get to, and where would the point of convergence or divergence be? And I did what's called a bricolage approach to the analysis, which actually ended up being a complete head wreck, but it got me hooked into Jing Feng.
Okay.
And it opened my eyes to, it was like, I kind of felt like with Chinese medicine, my experience is that it's like you're in the most vast, cavernous, like Hogwarts castle.
Right.
You're in Hogwarts, and you go up one of the spiral staircases and you come into a chamber, and you're in the chamber, and it's awesome and magnificent and incredible. And you might spend a few years there and you just think, wow, this is incredible. This is Chinese medicine. I love it. And then you come out and you notice there's a great big long corridor, and you go down and you open another door, and there's now a vast room that you never even knew existed. And you take a peek and you think, holy bloody moly. Yeah. Really? Well, I thought that was Chinese medicine, but this is Chinese medicine. And then you look down the corridor and it's like gazillion more doors, and you just realize, you know what? I know this much.
I did a calculation 4 or 5 years ago with from a couple of my friends, and I said I need to live to 547 years to actually learn just
basics.
Just what I want to learn, not even everything. So I am 500 years short of that. And it's quite, and I think this is the thing with TCM. It's chopped down to some rudimentary syndrome approach with some extremely skilled doctors who can needle and do amazing things with moxa, but it is a paracetamol approach to Chinese medicine. And I always in my own clinic have this, I don't ever want Chinese medicine to be mainstream. That's my argument. Because to make it mainstream will destroy its essence. And to this day, I'd rather be like this, like the barefoot doctors that we are, operating in the community and teaching and helping people, because we'll always survive that way. Now, we may never reach the the pinnacles that we sometimes dream it could be. I do think COVID has allowed us to show how powerful. I know my herbalist teacher, Dr. Guo, he treated 500,000 people with COVID-1 back in 2003 and won a patent award for one of his quantum formulas that he calls. Now he is a herbalist who merged quantum theory with herbalism.
Wow.
So he took TCM and then his thing is treat the excess. And then he's a Qigong master. So all his herbs treat the passage of Qi through the body in certain pathways, namely a circular pathway that runs up the body and down the spine in the opposite direction to the microcosmic, and then these circular circulations called Zhejuan. And so it's very interesting that he treats the tongue like the planet. So the planet being, 70% water. And he looks for the excessives and then he moves the excessives and he finds exit points to allow that excess to super. I'll send you a video. You can watch him in action. Super effective for very difficult cancers, actually, like pancreatic cancer. Not that we're not allowed to say that we treat cancer, are we, in this country? God love us.
No.
So we help people who maybe
adjunct therapy.
Adjunct therapy, yes. We are supporting the person. So Jingfang, huge. Yeah, it's a Hogwarts for sure. I've looked at it. I've seen the intake sheets. I've never met Suzanne Robidoux. I do remember being in Monteith a few years ago, and my students went to study with her needling style. And I think she had a Batsa reading.
She's quite a terrifying woman to train with because she's
bam, bam, bam,
she
bam,
has
bam,
a
bam.
racehorse brain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's intimidating to try and keep up with.
Yeah.
I literally, her words are going ahead and I can hear she's speaking, but trying to comprehend everything she's saying at the pace she's saying it is just like, right over.
Yeah. She's trying to condense a lot of work into 2 or 3 days.
She's phenomenal.
Yeah. I know she was involved, I remember a long time ago, Bagua.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Bagua, Batsa. She does Shaochenchu, which is a form of I Ching. But it's quite interesting. It's not quite I Ching. It's a different. It's more of a kind of a Chronos approach to I Ching. She teaches. I mean, she teaches Moxa. She teaches what she calls Yuan Qi acupuncture, which I think is a little bit like the 5-element acupuncture we're talking about, where you've got zones, 5-element zones around the body.
Yeah, I think it's quite aggressive though, isn't it? The needling's quite strong. Is it strong?
It is quite strong. Yeah, it's a whole pain relief methodology.
Okay. Yeah.
And then right now she's rescuing dogs in China for a living.
As you do.
Yeah.
Right. So after the Jingfeng, then you came back from China.
Came back from China, waded through the dissertation for a couple of years, trying to fit it in with raising children and all the rest. And then really, have just kind of got on with running a clinic, raising my kids, and just training with Suzanne ongoingly. I'm always training with her.
Right.
And then Neigong is another really important part.
How did you come into Neigong? Where did you discover that?
I mean, I guess I always had a love of Qigong. Hadn't had a lot of exposure, but had trained wherever I had an opportunity. And then
for those listening who don't know what Qigong is, it's a body-mind practice with movement, breath, postures, meditative practices. And then there is a branch which is called Neigong, which is a more working internally. So if you wanted to think of Qigong as moving the outside of the body to move physically internally, and then Neigong is being able to mobilize your internal energy to manifest it externally for whatever reason, whether it's for healing or repairing tissue or martial applications or just strengthening the function of the body as a whole. Yeah. So it's one's outside in, one's inside out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then a really old family friend, she's been part of our family almost like a sister for decades, started training with Dama Mitchell. And she said to me years ago, Freya, you should really come and train with him. Get on it. He's really good.
Mm.
So I emailed him at the time. This is probably back in, I don't know, 2012 or thereabouts.
Shout out to Sam Tyson.
Yeah.
Sammy boy.
And he sweetly replied to me. At that point, they were setting up a training school in Sweden. And he was like, yeah, come over and join in. But I had 4 small children, or fairly small. I couldn't just up and go for 3 weeks or 4 weeks of the summer. So I had him on my radar, but I just couldn't ever get away until 2015. And the summer of 2015, I went over to Sweden and spent 3 weeks. But it was the first time in my life, first of all, I had had that level of intense training, physically and in terms of internal energetics. And it was a Tai Chi intensive. Never done a stitch of Tai Chi in my life. Never done a stitch of internal work or Neigong in my life, and never done a stitch of the level of fitness that was required. And I remember crawling out of the hall at the end of each session and literally collapsing on the grass and inhabiting my body, as painful as it was throughout those 3 weeks. And then we were sleeping in these like really rustic bell tents.
I remember you telling me the story.
And it was like slug city. You step outside at night to go and pee, and you couldn't find anywhere in the grass that didn't have slugs. You just had to sort of tiptoe around all the slugs. It was like hardcore. God. But again, I just, as challenging and arduous as it was, it was like I'd found a reservoir of champagne. It was just like, oh my God, what have I been missing? And so I then just took every opportunity to train with Damo thereafter. I then did a 3-year training with him in sort of rudimentary acupuncture, which was kind of bonkers really, because it was literally a repeat of the syllabus I'd had in my formative education. There wasn't a lot of new information, but it was just adding another whole layer of richness. Damo just brings immense richness to everything. And then I did sort of Qigong training with him for a couple of years in London, back and forth. I mean, at one point, because I was doing both those courses simultaneously, so I was kind of over twice a month, one for the Chinese medicine, one for the Qigong. That went on for nearly 3 years.
You pretty much lived your 20s and your 30s and 40s, pretty much.
20s not so much, because my 20s was kids, raising the kids, running the school. And then early 30s, 40s, mid 30s, all my 40s, and an unspecified age. Later, I'm still at it.
At 38. So look, so now we're here in your farmhouse. And we've been teaching tui-na. We've been doing, this is the second weekend, 10 students, all bright, all bushy-tailed, all eager to learn. And it's actually been a lifesaver for me as well. So thank you, because I've pretty much given up teaching in terms of face-to-face. I just had enough of it. But then I made a resolution and actually one of the girls pulled a really interesting tarot card. She said, you need to let go, let go of all these restrictive thoughts you have around what you're doing and become more authentic. And I think I am becoming as I get closer to my golden year and trying to become a little bit more authentic. And so so that's been great, and it's going to be interesting to see the personal development that arises for these people, not just the skills that they learn. And tui-na for me is the biggest physical therapy system in the world ever, the most tried and tested ever. There is actually reams and reams and reams and reams of medical information probably stashed away somewhere in all the hospitals, just never released. But there we go. And we do what we can with what we have. So we've been trying that. So we've got now 10 people ready to work with it in the next few months and get it out there. And then we've probably going to continue for the rest of the year doing something with tui-na. And maybe other things, other projects, perhaps, maybe a retreat, maybe also we get some guest lecturers to come over. We've got a growing list of really inspiring people we'd like to collaborate with. Also, because I came across this word a couple of years ago during COVID, the beginning of it, and this Mind Valley crowd appeared on the scene, and a lot of my closest friends and colleagues logged onto it and were using it as a resource for learning. And then you mentioned the word WIldfit, and I thought, I have heard of it. And then I had this image of people running through the woods with kettlebells and then spears and, you know, barefoot running, and it's like WIldfit. I didn't realize it was actually a dietary
and nutritional
program. Actually, I just found out, I think it was 2-3 days ago, one of Federico, if you're watching, Federico Black, one of my Qigong students over in Geneva, his brother did the WIldfit. And he told me, I know that. My brother did it. He loved it. So you want to explain, you're the only WIldfit instructor that's active in Ireland, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
What is it?
So WIldfit is basically, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And it really helps to recalibrate your whole relationship to food and nutrition. It works with your psychology around food. It works with your behavior patterns and habits around food, unpacks that in a way that loosens the grip of those kind of mental and emotional patterns that you have with food. It disarms the food industry's grip of you as a person, and helps you to realize how we are really all cash cows for the food industry to our own detriment, and sheds light on the ways in which the food industry coerces us towards food choices that are really harmful for us. And over the course of 90 days, it will slowly but surely take you through step by step through a detox process, through a sort of taking a holiday. It's what's called taking a holiday from certain foods. So it's not like it's a forever thing. So your kind of inner rebel doesn't have to freak out completely. It's not like you're saying goodbye to your favorite foods forever, but we're just going to take a holiday from these foods, give your body a break, and give you the opportunity to experience premium vitality for long enough that it really embeds that experience into you physiologically, into a body held memory. So that when you come out the other side of WIldfit, you can't forget that. You can't forget how good it feels to not have sugar coursing through your veins. You can't forget how good it feels to wake up with that just premium energy driving you each day. It's not like you have to find your energy. It's just there, like a wellspring bubbling up inside you. So it's based really on the ideas of anthropological nutrition. In other words, what do we as human beings need? Not what we've been cultured to need, not what we've been kind of coerced to need, but we as a species. If you were to look at human beings as a species, much like, tigers, what does a tiger need? That's very different to what an elephant needs, which is very different to what a badger needs. What do human beings need biologically and nutritionally? And how have we, what's our hardwiring in terms of nutrition? So if we take, our kind of ancient selves and the ways in which we lived seasonally, and our bodies still understands that. That's the instruction manual that our body understands. So certain foods trigger in us the sense that, okay, we're in autumn. So if we're in autumn, because we're eating a lot of carbohydrate rich foods, a lot of sugary foods, that means that winter's coming. So we better lay down some fat stores because we've got tough times ahead of us. So we're going to pack it away, lay down the fat stores, keep hold of it, because we've got a few months to survive. But the problem is that we eat like we're in autumn all year round now. Everything we eat is triggering autumn. So our bodies are continuously answering to the signal, save fat, lay down fat. We've got tough times ahead. But what WIldfit will do is take you through all of the seasons through the 90-day program, so that you learn how to drive the metabolism of your body by giving nutritional instructions to your body. So your body understands what autumn is by the foods that you eat. It also understands what spring is. So basically winter would be in ancient times a time of lean eating, if eating at all, or you were scavenging around for the scraps. So it was basically a fast. Right. That was your, not that you do fast on the WIldfit program. It is an option at one point, but you don't have to. But that's what your body understands winter is fasting. And then comes spring, and you have the absolute flush of green vegetation and of course good hunting. You've got all the protein and you've got all the leafy greens, and you take your body into spring, into what we call deep spring in WildFit. And in deep spring, the body understands, okay, winter's over. We've survived. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Don't need the fat stores anymore.
Yeah.
Let's switch to fat burning mode.
Yeah.
Draws on all those fat stores for its fuel. We remove everything that could possibly trigger sugar metabolism.
Yeah.
Get you into fat burning. And the idea is really that even if you were stick thin and didn't need to lose any weight, the problem with the modern diet is that it is so full of chemical residues and plastic residues and all these sorts of unhelpful agents that our body just continually is firefighting to cope with. But in order to protect the vital organs, buries it in the food, in the fat stores, to try and, you know, park it somewhere. So at least, even if you were stick thin, get your fat stores off once a year. Just remove it, get rid of those toxins, and they'll lay down fresh fat stores, because we need fat stores. We need visceral fat, but we need the right fat, and it needs to be good fat. So go recycle your fat each year. And for those of us, and let's face it, in Ireland, that's about 47% of us that are carrying excess stores that we don't need. And that's a burden on the body. You know, the heart system has to cope with it. The circulation system has to cope with it. Like all the organ systems have to cope with it. We're carrying heavier weight around. That's tiring. It's slowing down our minds. It's slowing down our bodies. We don't need it. So take the opportunity to actually shed some of those unnecessary pounds, and Deep Spring will do that for you. So through the course of a 90-day program, you're unpacking your emotional relationship to food, your psychological relationship to food, your addictions, really coming, you know, loosening the grip of those addictions now. And it's different, you know, some people really struggle with that.
Sure.
And may come out of the program not ever having completely broken up their relationship with sugar, but it will have loosened. It won't have quite the same
If
power.
anything, there's a deeper understanding of what you're doing to yourself. I mean, I did the ketogenic a few years ago. I can send you pictures, and I don't recognize myself. You know, even people said I looked so much younger and the skin was healthier and more radiant. And I think this is ridiculous. I'm eating like fat, like so much fat and meat, and I'm eating all the steaks that I like, healthy steaks. My wife's looking at me like, this cannot be healthy, but I looked healthy and I had more energy. So, you know, I think that this food pyramid that we look at should be in reverse.
It should. And this is what a lot of the program does, is it debunks the myths that are being peddled by the food industry. Like, for instance, fat is bad for you. You know, in actual fact, it's, you know, the sugar industry lays the blame at fat, but it's not necessarily the nutritional fats that's the problem. We need a certain amount of those nutritional fats. I mean, I remember watching this documentary about a New Zealand couple who, she was from, I think, the Netherlands, and he was New Zealand, and they decided to live off grid for like 15 years, something like mental, in the middle of the Coromandel in the north part of New Zealand. And they became like vegans, and they lived in the forest, and they camped, and the climate started to change and get a lot colder in the wintertime, and they were struggling, and he decided to go hunting, and she was younger than him and fitter than him, so she took up the bow and arrow, and even though she's vegan, she started to hunt for wild boar. And as soon as she started eating again the fat of the wild boar, not like a farmed animal, she said they could lie in the tent at night and she could feel the heat. She could feel her body generating heat because, you know, the calorific burn, her metabolism was working so efficiently from being outdoors, being exposed to cold, damp weather, to having to move all the time, that as soon as it was giving a high calorific food, it was using it immediately to generate heat. She said, I could fall asleep at night and sleep. I mean, so for me, that the ketogenic was an interesting, really interesting thing. But it did highlight to me how addicted sugar is, how addictive it is. And like, how it's in everything. Literally everything. You go along in the food shelves and then examine what's actually in your food basket, and hidden and disguised and under all sorts of names in the ingredients list will be sugar of some sort. So basically the pancreas is having a repetitive strain injury.
Yeah.
It's just working too hard, too constantly without a break for years.
Yeah. Amazing. I mean, one of my favorite scenes in the film is there's a scene in Dances with Wolves where he's showing them coffee and they're like, oh yeah, okay. And then they take the sugar and it's like, well, listen, it's like, you know, and that you can see the joy. There's like this instant joy when sugar hits them. And it's that idea of that calorific sweetness. That's that idea of the harvest, you know, having the fruits.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm seeing in the States now a movement towards just meat and fruit. So there's all these athletes now that are not even having greens. They're not even having veg. They're saying, I'm going for the meat because that's the highest quantity of high quality calories and nutrition, because the animals processed it for me.
Exactly.
And I'm eating the fats and the bone and the marrow. And then I'm taking the fruit because nature is saying, if you take me and eat me, I'm going to give you a high level of antioxidants and an instant energy boost. So you can lay down a certain amount of fat. In reward, I get to proliferate my species if you eat me and poo out the stones. And there's this kind of movement. Now, again, it's an extreme.
The problem with that is that, you know, ancestrally, nature imposed a limited access to fruit. So yeah, we had an abundance of fruit a couple of times a year. We didn't have access to it all year round. So again, your pancreas got a rest. And the reason we have such an addictive love of sugar really is because, again, ancestrally, we'd have been out hunting, we'd have been out gathering. Maybe only a handful of times a year did we ever find a honey store. But when you found a honey store, oh my God, you devoured every little bit of that honeycomb you could.
And your body was able to cope with it.
Yeah. And then you move on and you might not have honey again for weeks or months. So there is that, you know, there is that in our ancestral memory, an absolute need to have as much honey when you find it, because it could be months before you find it again. But we now apply that to the chocolate bar shelves on the shop
and
floor.
salt is equally as, like, I remember watching this documentary where the guy said, you know, Coca-Cola tastes sweet, but go and look how much salt is in it. You know, there is salt in Coca-Cola. And I was like, really? Yeah, but you just can't taste it. No. And the other thing then, so moving forward, you're the only WildFit instructor. You have a group of people that you take and you do an intake for 13 weeks program, and you coach them through the 13 weeks. And then they can make a decision to follow that lifestyle or come back and repeat if they want to. You can do a return to spring, which is kind of a condensed version of that once you've been through it once. So I'm going to set out a challenge to all my friends, my clients that are in Dublin, the people that come to me at the Jade Clinic. We're going to offer internships online with Freya coming up. We're not sure of the dates yet. We'll finalize that, but I'll give you a link to her bio in the description on the podcast in the YouTube video, and then we can start to grow this way of eating. Because a lot of my clients, I don't know what to do, and I'm like, well, I can give you a program, but I know you won't follow it. So you need to be held accountable, and you need to be prepared to be held accountable to it.
Exactly.
And so if you can have someone that's just guiding you and kicking your butt a little bit into shape, and I think I might even do this challenge and just film it so you can see the transformation that occurs for me. I'm up for it. And if anybody who students who are watching are up for it, let me know. We can give it a lash. And I'm sure my wife is going to be so hilarious watching me suffer when I'm really want a glass of whiskey and a pizza or something.
And half a packet of biscuits.
Half a packet of biscuits, Actually, I've got better with that, to be honest with you. But my wife's been doing this program where she cuts out gluten, reduces the sugar, no dairy for like 10 days. And then she goes more into healthy eating for 20 days. So it's a similar diet. It's like an 80-20 rule. And then she goes again for 10 days. I'm not really sure. I've seen her do other programs and I think get better results. But I think as you age, you've got to work that bit harder. So we'll see. But she's so determined at it. So Yeah, and we were saying as well that it is possible to do it as a vegetarian. It may
It
be a
is.
little bit more difficult to do as a vegan because there are certain nutritional deficiencies that occur on veganism.
Yeah, I mean, because really the idea is that the human diet is actually omnivorous. We've got the teeth for an omnivorous diet.
I have the big canines.
Yeah, so it does favor omnivores, and it's definitely a lot easier for omnivores. And you can do like a basic deep spring version, and then when you get a little bit braver, you could actually go in the future and do hunter spring, which is much more hardcore around the animal protein. But WildFit is developing what's called gatherer's spring, which is more the vegan vegetarian option. And it's it's a way to try and help vegans and vegetarians have as much of the benefit of a WildFit approach, but without necessarily having to abandon their vegan or vegetarian.
Have you tried any of the cashew cheese? A lot of my friends are eating this cashew-based cheese. It's supposed to be phenomenal.
Right.
There is a company, I can't remember. I'll see if I can dig up the name, but my friend of mine, George, in Canada, shout out to George. He did a DNA test, and it came back that it matched his ancestry, which he knew already was Mediterranean with some Scottish blood and whatever. But he basically, after like 47 pages, said, you'd be better off in a pescatarian style diet. And so he actually went plant-based for quite a bit. He lost a good bit of weight, which he wanted to. And he'd had heart issues, which he was trying to resolve, and inflammatory issues. But it's so interesting with him when he works really hard as a builder and a fabricator, and he's not getting enough sleep or enough rest, the inflammation. So it's not just about diet, it's stripping away the stimulants, improving your sleep, your mobility.
Absolutely.
Shout out to John Kemp as well. He's big into all of that. He chooses to live on the island of Maui for that reason. So his constant access to healthy food, sunlight, and he has the freedom.
And this is it, if you eat well, you get good oxygen and good air, good sunlight, good rest, and exercise. Like, you've covered 90% of the bases for healthy life. It's just that modern life doesn't support us to do that.
No.
So it's about it's about re-empowering ourselves, really, to return to being fully human.
Yes.
And not just being coerced into being part of someone else's profit line.
Yeah. And this is the thing, after COVID, a lot of people did not want to go back to the office because that 1 hour lunch break was spent walking around in the fresh air and not commuting for an hour and a half in the morning. And, spending quality time in the evening with your family, baking. My wife did so much baking.
Just
I have the pictures
human.
to prove it. And videos of me and my daughter doing qigong in the back garden when we lived, things that we wouldn't get a chance to do normally.
No, and somehow we're mesmerized by the myth that we are told is the normal way to live in modern life, and it's not.
I had a vision years ago when we were in Canada. One of the girls, Tiara Owen, she came up to me and said, "What is your vision for the future?" And I said, my vision, ideally, if you were to ask me, was to set up a community where people could come in, and it's a village, and you come to heal. And it'd be somewhere in northern Spain. And that was the original dream. And it would be all eco-friendly built, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, whoa, that vision's huge. And it's like, you've got to have that vision. Now, maybe that vision has changed. I think it probably has a little bit. But do you know what I mean? Like, people want to get into technology, and they want to go up in the sky and put satellites and speed up things. I get all that, but wouldn't it be nice just to go?
Yeah, I mean, the idea I'm really playing around with at the moment is like the process of rewilding ourselves. It's about somehow, and there's something, and I'm really exploring what does it mean to rewild ourselves. But that, for me anyway, it's been a real journey of coming back to my truth, coming back to liberating myself from concepts of how I should live, what modern life should be about, taking all the shoulds out of it.
Yeah.
And
we should all over ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, I guess it's something to do with empowering. It's something to do with honesty. It's something to do with having the courage to actually be myself. There's a lot of elements to it, but just as a concept of rewilding ourselves as a species feels really pertinent for these times, that there's something we've become very domesticated.
Right.
And in that we've lost ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I've been in the corporate sector. I've worked in those rabbit holes, 120 calls a day. I've done all that. I was a debt recovery officer, like this kind of crack. I've done it, but I always had that vision to break out of that. And, I do think we are still in the industrial complex. So when I look at my school, it's like 2,000 kids in the school. The girls went in one end, the boys went in the other. The teachers went in the middle, and it looked like a military school. And you can see how that is driven at a very early age into people how they need to be. Now, God knows what it'd be like if we were all hippies and hugging trees. I'd say it'd be fucking chaos.
Yeah, but it's not that you have to become that either. Like I'm a huge advocate of being in the world, but not of it. It's like give wholeheartedly to life and society and serve in whatever way you feel called or whatever is your calling, but also have the savviness to question and don't betray your humanity. And there's there's
a lot of betrayal going on right now.
A lot of betrayal. But it starts with us. No one can make you betray yourself.
I do think there are, without being as conspiracy theorists, there are people out there that see certain people as a lower human. As a servant to their gain.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. We're cash cows for the food industry. We are pawns in someone's profit line. But only we can take back that power and say, you know what? I make choices around what I eat every time I walk down the shopping aisle. I don't have to fuel someone's profit line with my shopping basket. I could just buy what Mother Nature grew, feed myself incredibly well, and keep the money in my pocket and the power in my belly.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, I have a friend who talks about wealth quite a lot. And he said, one of the keys to wealth is not trying to make more money, is saving, is reducing your spend. That can be even more powerful than trying to earn money, because earning more money sometimes takes more effort, more time away from home, more time in the office to get more money and working long hours. Whereas when you could just say, well, I could grow 80% of my own veg. I could shop at the local farmers, butchers for my meat and have a big chest freezer where I keep everything.
Or work with a local hunter and just have wild meat.
Exactly. And
time is the new wealth.
Time is new wealth. And freedom, like I see with you, you can rustle up. Like I've been having great food, venison, right? I love venison. And lots of avocados and fresh stuff. And we still have a bit of bread. I like a bit of sourdough bread and whatever. But if you think about it, like you cooked the stew last night, and we're not quite in spring. We are, alchemically, but the temperature is still very damp and cold. So to have a hot stew is kind of what your ancestors would do as they advanced their cooking methods. Yet it's simple. I mean, if we think about it, really, the modern Northern European is probably 40,000 years old. The diet we're eating is 80 years old. And our body's like, what the hell? The fuck? Like, we have a situation in China right now with these, what they call emperor children. And these kids are just big, fat lumps of
and our metabolisms don't know what to do with it. We've developed culturally incredibly quickly, but biologically we haven't.
No,
we're still biologically the same as we were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years ago.
There's a very funny podcast. I can't think it was a famous podcaster said that he was speaking to a client, and he said like he's in New York City, and this guy like does very similar kind of approaches, hunting, eating, gathering, working with his body. And he said he's in New York and he sees this big New York cop eating donuts, walking down the street, and he said, would you ever see that kind of human in the wild? Never.
Exactly.
Never. So what is it doing? What is it doing here? Like, how is it even good? It wouldn't survive. You wouldn't survive in the wild being that shape.
No, exactly.
You're gone.
I remember seeing
your
the most
food.
beautiful photograph. Eric Edmeades, who's the founder of WildFit. I mean, he was actually born in South Africa and he spent a lot of his childhood there.
Legend.
Yeah.
Go the South Africans.
And has spent a lot of time with the Hadza tribe as part of his kind of study in terms of what is anthropological nutrition about. But there's this beautiful photograph of a long line of Hadza hunter men. But what's so striking is they're fit, eye-wateringly fit.
Yeah.
But their physique is identical.
Yes.
Every single one of them, you can see the muscle tone. Yeah. They are just brimming with vitality. Yeah. But their body shape was uniform.
Yeah.
Because that is the shape of a human body if it's not interfered with. Yeah.
Same diet.
Exactly.
I will try and dig out. There's a fantastic interview with this guy who followed them. I managed to translate what they were saying.
Yeah.
And they said, they asked one of the tribal leaders, what is life to you? What is the meaning of life? And he said, meat.
Yeah.
Well, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, meat is life.
Yeah.
What's the second most important thing to you? Oh, our dogs that come with us hunting. They help us, protect us. And he was expecting some massively deep, profound. He's like, no. For us, meat is life. We hunt, we run, and we hunt. That's our life. That's what we live for. It's like, wow, imagine having such a simple approach. And now we've got these, excuse my language, I can't swear, it's my podcast, fucking lunatics who are making artificial meat. What the fuck are you doing?
Oh my God.
And where is it coming from? And who's making it? And what is it made of? Recycled humans? Recycled animals? What is that about? And we're now beginning to see genetic deviation because of our diet.
Yeah, totally.
Massive deviation.
Totally.
So if we do turn into little small grey aliens with black eyes, you've been warned, right? That's the way it's going. So if you want to get a hold of Freya, we will leave details below. She's in Dunmanway and she's also here in her cottage. We call it sort of the hospital cottage. And if you want to learn more about tui-na, you can contact me or Freya. And WildFit, we'll leave some information there for them if they want to contact you.
Come and join the next challenge.
Anything else you want to say to people? Well, actually, another thing to say, WildFit isn't just for Irish people. So Freya has people internationally as well, which can be a bit of a challenge at times.
There's a bit of an interesting time zone issue at the moment. I've got a lady in Japan who's 9 hours ahead of the rest of my group, and we're constantly trying to find a suitable time to meet.
So for international listeners of the podcast, whoever you are, don't be shy. Anything else you want to add?
I've coached people in Canada, Germany, France, all over the UK, Japan, USA.
Yeah.
So it's
as
long as you've got an internet connection,
that's it.
That's all you need.
Anything else you want to add?
Just to say thank you to this absolutely incredible legend of a man. We're having, as they say on Gavin and Stacey, having a blast, sugar tits.
Yeah, that's it. I've got the tits.
It's mighty. I feel like I found a real brother in you, and it's just
that's
awesome.
it. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Let's keep it rolling. Thanks for joining, and take care of you.